Yeah, so today was day number 3. Now we start to mix in some third down scenarios into practice, teaching these situations, the philosophies, the concepts that will go with, added on to the first and second down mix down. So it was awesome to see how the guys handled that today. On both sides of the ball, we did some really good things. Naturally, you want to see things go back and forth. And we were able to do that. We were able to get some things done and focusing on in terms of disguises and coverages and pressures and stuff within those situations, but also the quarterbacks today did a nice job, probably the best job in a long while, on the first day for third down. So really pleased with that. Obviously, we're continuing to harp on as we get the shells on today. We put shoulder pads on for the first time since spring ball. You wouldn't think that is a big deal, but it does. It adds on when the guys have been training without those for some months now. So it was awesome to get out there. Now we build on this. We've got to continue to fine-tune our fundamentals and techniques at the line of scrimmage. But, man, these guys have been practicing. They've been getting off the ball. It's been physical. And now understanding and learning how to do and play with a certain physical mentality with the proper body control and being in the right position and all those things.
Grow in the off season, but I'm sure as a coach you're conscious of trying to improve and develop yourself. Was there anything that you did in particular this summer that kind of stood out to you as a growth moment or a way that filled your cup heading towards the grind?
Yeah, that's year-round. That's weekly. That's daily. It starts every single morning when the alarm clock goes off. And how am I going to grow? How am I going to be better? It starts with reading certain things. We talk a lot about to the players about our purpose, which is filled by our why and those things. So I'm a huge believer in that. I'm a huge believer that if you're not growing, you're going the other way, and we don't even need to talk about that. But over the course of the year, all the way back from January, I've been very we won't go into specific details, but we've been very lucky to do a fair amount of professional development from big picture program, whether it's on the college level or the NFL level, and how different ways and ideas to build a team, to build the cohesiveness, the performance of a team, how you set those standards. Obviously in this game, it's very challenging. So the first thing that is always is just building the trust and making sure that these guys know we actually care about them. It's not just always about the X's and O's of football. And obviously as you go along and the more experience you get in a certain role, given all the responsibility that comes with it, the time management, right, and knowing very specific to where you can have a bigger impact and where you can be to help, even whether it's a department in the building or whether it's a specific piece, within the 3 phases of football and going in and being able to have an impact in those areas.
Last week when we asked about the defensive line, it seems like all the coaches were raving about Michael Callahan, and getting a chance to watch him this week, he's been very involved with the line. Just what have you seen of him? What has his growth been like, and just kind of how cool is it for him to get a moment like this?
Well, he's a guy that, number one, Mike is an awesome young man. He cares so much, not only about his responsibilities and, again, how he's developing and growing, but more importantly, he cares about his teammates and his people around him. He cares, and therefore he cares about learning how to do his job really well. And he is, he's got some rhythm in his game right now, and he's doing some really good things, and he's so eager to continue to learn and grow. It's awesome to see that, his body's in a good position right now. The last couple years, his body wasn't in the position it's been right now. He's had a tremendous offseason in terms of his physical development, not only in the weight room in terms of his strength, but his flexibility, his change of direction, and things like that.
As far as leadership goes, what's standing out to you for the team so far this week when it comes to that leadership?
Well, they're practicing with a sense of urgency. They're very intentful. From the things that we always emphasize, everybody sees the big picture, sees what happens around the ball, sees the guy throwing the ball, the guy catching the ball, the guy getting the ball handed off. But there's so many other things that go into it prior to, a guy catching the ball or running the ball or a guy making a tackle or making a play on the ball. There's so many things that go into it. And the leadership through experience and knowing and understanding that if we do certain things really well, then the rest will take care of itself. It just comes down to building the experience through team reps. And fortunately enough, we've got more team reps in this fall camp already than we've ever gotten because of the roster and how we're able to organize these practices now, which builds experience within.
Any players in particular really stood out to you so far?
You know what? Yeah, I mean, we can sit up here and talk a whole lot. I mean, we can be up here all day in terms of that. It's really cool to see, too. More importantly, naturally, you're going to want me to go to the offense or defense side of the ball. But to see how guys are standing out on special teams, to see how James is punting the ball, to see how Jonah, is handling his field goals in that operation, to see how the O-line has improved our protection on field goal block, to see how guys are stepping up on our punt team, and guys want to be on that punt team. We're seeing older guys lead these special teams. We're seeing younger guys want to jump in and be a part of it, and that's been really cool. But, on the offensive side of the ball, it's been really cool to see the O-line mold this mentality each and every day and how they're working together, the standard and expectation they're holding themselves to. We've seen guys make plays all throughout the wide receiver group. Prince has made plays. Emac has made plays. Billy, Shea, Steph. It's pretty awesome to see the ball getting spread around. And the tight ends as well. I mean, with Riley and Matt, those guys, they're doing a good job. We got a lot of growth out in front of us. But, specifically on the defense, what is most important is playing defense with a certain mentality and effort and being relentless with those things, because they will make up for a lot of stuff. With the defense, obviously, you got to be on the same page. You got to be able to communicate. And so I really love how, obviously, DJ is an experienced guy, leads in the front and how he communicates, but also the safeties in the back end with Rodney and Tubes and how those guys are leading themselves. It's great to see Markel back out there. Markel, JC stepped up from his experience he's got last year and's paralleled into getting better every single day. And as you guys spoke on, you guys were talking about Mike in the front. It's really good. I mean, we got to continue on with our D tackles and our interior of our defense and the progress we're making. But we like what we're getting out of our edge players right now. We got to continue. Again, competition. Competition's the best thing for coaches right now. It's good to have some depth, like we always talk about, not only so you can get the reps, but these guys know, like, man, there's someone standing over there on the sideline that needs to get these reps too. I better make the most of mine, and that's the best thing when you build a team and you're able to, create some depth that way.
That said, at the running back position, obviously, how are you seeing George and Ashton kind of push each other?
I mean, they always do. I'll be honest with you, those two guys don't need any external motivation. They actually work really well together. They're two of the most competitive people that I've ever been around. And so naturally, I think I said it before, for our unity groups in the summertime at the very beginning, George selected Ashton on his unity group right away, so they can't be away from each other. But it's pretty cool to see those guys in this day and age in college football, in the NFL. I mean, a lot of times you got to have two tailbacks, and we're very fortunate. We have two guys that are really, really good players and really good young men, but we also have some guys too. I mean, it doesn't stop with just them. T. Crow always steps up, and whatever role T. Crow can fill and do whatever, he gets his chance to carry the ball. We've all seen what he's done there, and Breezy's doing a really nice job early on in this camp, as well as KD.
Kane Beresford and Coach Keane were talking about how tough it can be to move positions on the offensive line. What have you seen from Mason kind of in his first week going at center?
Yeah, and that's like behind the scenes last year, right? Maybe not everybody gets to see it, and that's why I'll lead in with this. Like Mason was on the ready to do this stuff last year in terms of playing center and all that. And all throughout spring, we didn't see him maybe in the spring game, or we didn't see him a lot, but he was off to the side consistently working on playing this position. It's been the plan all along. Again, we talked about this. It's very personnel driven, and how do the pieces come together? How do we get our best personnel on the field? Then, again, it's that competition behind that is going to push people and really shoot. I mean, whether it's Nikolai, Nathan, Jason, that's what we're talking about, right? And so that competition, not only that, but then these players understand, and they're doing a great job. Coach Keene's doing a good job of being able to teach guys some big picture stuff. So now they're able to play some other positions too, to find out, and grow and build to see, okay, maybe a guy he's good here, but maybe he's better over here, or he can help us over here as well. Because as we know, this is a long season, and building those fronts up. So when we talk about building the depth and the competition that goes with that, that's really what we're talking about.
How much more depth do you think you have this year than your first 2 years? You mentioned a lot of names.
Yeah.
It sounds like you may think you have a lot more.
Well, in these first 3 practices, we've been able to go we're team periods, we're able to two-spot it and have 2 team periods going on each side of the field. We haven't been able to do that as much this early on. And until we've been able to get into scout teams and stuff like that later on into our preparation for opponents, during game weeks. And so to be able to get these reps within the time frame of which we have to be on the field is awesome. And again, it's not just the fronts, but it's building the whole team around in terms of how we're recruiting. Everybody always asks, how do you manage all these numbers, with all the different variables that go into recruiting now. It's not easy, and we don't have all the answers, but we're excited about where we're at right now and how we've been able to build the overall roster in terms of getting the right people in the right positions to be able to get as many team reps as we have.
How many focus I would say on your team practices? It's been a crazy 48 hours.
Yeah, it has.
How do you see what's going on impacting Boise State and the Mountain West, and just your take on everything?
Yeah, I mean, so here in the last couple years, let alone the last 48 hours, I mean, the landscape of college football is changing. And that's what it's been. And whether it's conference realignments, there's rules changing within the game. There's definitely rules changing within recruiting. And, in that setting, obviously, in terms of the name, image, and likeness. So when we're talking about, how we're growing and as a staff and as a program, that is year round and trying to stay out in front of things. Obviously, we're focused, as you said right now, on the controllables, and that's what is in front of us. And that starts with focusing on today and all opportunities that we have. We all know we got a very challenging schedule this year. And we can do that with confidence, knowing that we have an administration that is going to put us, in the best position possible as the landscape of college football continues to change and grow, and how Bronco Nation will go forward into that.
How beneficial are the redshirt rules for a guy like Cage Casey? Got time in late last year, and now he's ready to go at left tackle.
Yeah, and so we just spoke about that. So a lot of the rules changed. You couldn't do this a few years ago. And what I mean you couldn't do this is you couldn't play in 4 games and then still redshirt. And now even the rule where you can play in 4 games and play in the bowl game as a 5th as a redshirt, which the way knock on wood for us, we haven't had drastic change in our rosters. We've had guys that have been very committed to our family and being a part of this and growing as people. But overall there is more change to the roster. So allowing some young guys to get in there and get an experience and not necessarily use a whole year and play in 4 games, that is huge. It's not only for them, but it helps the team. It helps then, the following year, that young man knows what it looks like to prepare, to handle his schoolwork, his personal life, and to prepare and play in a game. Because everybody thinks like we just roll the ball out there and play. No, this is a full-time job. There's a lot that goes into it. So I love that rule, that guys can play in 4 games and a bowl game and still redshirt.
What have you liked out of him this offseason?
He didn't get to do a whole lot in spring, but he's a tremendously hard worker. He's very detailed. His mobility is really good for an offensive lineman. I mean, in the summertime training, you see him out there moving around, and you can mistake him for a big old tight end at times because he moves so well. So we're excited about what he has and how he could continue to develop, which he's going to need to, because he's played some. He's got some of that action, but it's a whole different deal to be, a full-time player.
How has Bush Camden filled in and coming in as a new offensive coordinator with so many good weapons that he has, but that is 3 offensive coordinators in about a year, and just wondering what he brings to the table.
Yeah, and so like we spoke on before, in terms of the fit, it's been all about the fit. We spoke about this when Bush came. We spoke about this to start. The whole objective was to find the right fit so that we have the right pieces in place and we can continue to build off of the things that we did well last year. And Bush is a guy that has the experience, and he is the right fit with the experience. So him being able to mesh into things that he's done successfully, given the personnel we have and what fits them, we're further along right now offensively than we've been in a long time.
You mentioned some of the changes. One of the changes this year, they're going to change the clock, where they don't stop the clock on first downs. What do you think that's going to do, and how much time do you think it's actually going to save?
Yeah, that's the question, right? So we've all discussed this in our meetings behind closed doors in terms of a conference and all that, and the answer is, we're going to see. We're going to see how much that time changes. There's some things, with you can't take consecutive timeouts and all that. I don't really think that's going to affect, because if you take a consecutive timeout, how long is the second timeout? 30 seconds. It's not very long. It's not very long. So I don't know how significant that role is going to be, but to go back to your question, on the clock rolling on a first down, until it gets into that 2-minute marker, I mean, it's going to change. And so we're talking about the length of a game, but more specifically for a team, we're talking about the number of plays you can get within a game. So obviously we got referees that will come out and work with us from the Mountain West Conference so that we can get a good feel for those things, so that they can work their mechanics. And we do got, new referees. Mike's heading up the refereeing crew within our conference now, and so we're excited to work with him and have some of the crews come out.
With the shells and shoulder pads coming on today, and you guys get to ramp up contact as you go throughout the next week, just how exciting is it for your guys to be able to compete and get physical after, a long summer conditioning session?
Well, I think you guys are already off the field today, but, as men do and young men do, there was, there's a little bit of wrestling and fighting going on out there today, but we made sure to hug each other before we left the field and make sure that we all know what it is. It's football, so they're excited. A little bit of that shows us the physical nature. Obviously, being able to play it and keep our emotions in check is a big piece. But it's exciting to see again. And when we talk about the line of scrimmage now, again, remember how wide that field is. There's wide receivers out there. There's DBs out there and stuff too. And it was cool to see them get in there and today and really get after it, and how they were blocking on the perimeter, and wide receivers working up to the second level and blocking, because ultimately those are the blocks too that extend 8-yard runs into real long ones.
Sheldon Newton is obviously a space eater out there. I'm curious, just in the last few days, how disruptive has he been, and how disruptive can he be in the middle of the field?
Yeah, we're really grateful for, we've recruited and built some depth in there so that we can develop it. Sheldon's one of those guys. The progress we made from practice 1 to practice number 2 was much better, and obviously that's what we want to see out of Sheldon with the rest of the DTs is as we start to add in situations and understanding how to play the situations specifically at that position. I mean, that's where defense starts inside. Sheldon, the one thing that I'll say about Sheldon that he's done really well, speaking about how big of a man he is, I mean, he's been able to run the ball and not only handle his space inside as he's learning his fundamentals and techniques and how we're going to play this game at the line of scrimmage here at Boise State, but it just shows too how much he cares to be a part of that relentless mentality in that defense, and not only how he's ran the ball, but you talk about Howard as well, and how he's got some twitch and some explosiveness to him, and how he can get out and eat up some grass chasing the ball.
When did he get here, Sheldon? Was he here in spring?
Yes, he was.
You talk about Sheldon, and there's Amarion, and there's a lot of these guys that came from different programs, and when you talk to them, they talked about that recruiting, and Boise State just felt different. You guys in year 3, how are you guys selling recruits and even transfers on this is Boise State, and what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, that's in any organization, it is all about the fit, and it starts with people. You can have an unbelievable product, the people drive that product, the people being on the same page, how they communicate. And that's really what we focused on in the last 2 years, and in particular, at the beginning of this year, and building in this roster specific to this team this year, and finding people. Yeah, they have a skill set. You watch them on film, like, yeah, that skill set fits what we're looking for. But then there's so many other things that you got to go into. Does this person really love football? How does this person learn? Is this person going to be consistent day in and day out? Because consistency creates accountability, and then we're able to develop, which we've all been talking about. And so that's been a huge focus on ours. And again, finding guys that want to do all these things and really enjoy doing it, right? Because that's the growth that it takes. Everybody wants to play right away. Everybody wants to get on the field. But finding that right fit of bringing people into our plan of development all the way from January, or whether they come in the summertime, finding the right people so that we can execute that plan of development. Whether, this is obviously, there's a lot that goes on in terms of helping them develop as young men. This will be the biggest growth stage of their life as young people, being away from home, understanding what it looks like to make the right choices and to be consistent with those, therefore allowing them to have a better process, within the building, within school, and how they grow and develop.